I'm going to follow on now, and we're going to start by looking at the initial invitation to the peer reviewer. So this is an email sent to the peer reviewer asking if they would undertake peer review. And what we're suggesting is that it should contain the following. So in the case of a protocol, just the title alone, but in the case of a review, the title, the abstract, and the plain language summary of the review. You should also give a clear deadline for the timing for the return of the review comments, and include a statement that all the information that you're sharing with the reviewer is confidential. It will be very useful to give a link to the Cochrane conflict of interest policy, which we've given you here. Now, we are encouraging editorial teams to send these invitations as a workflow ticket, and ME Support have put together some supporting documentation, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. It's also worth remembering that the membership system that's recently been launched will give peer reviewers credit if the peer review is conducted through the workflow. Moving on to the peer reviewer checklist, please make sure that your peer review checklist, which is sent to methodologists, specialists, consumers, and all those involved in the peer review process, includes these sections. There's a section on the potential conflicts of interest. You should recognize these because these are already contained on the standard generic documents that have been in use by, I would suggest, most CRGs that were put together originally by the Editorial Resources Committee. So there's the potential conflict of interest, which must be completed by the reviewer, and also the peer reviewer anonymity and acknowledgement questions. And it's quite important to note the responses to these, because we're asking, are they willing to be identified as an author of this peer review feedback? Are they happy to be acknowledged in the published review? And are they happy to be acknowledged on the group's website? And of course, looking at these responses helps guide going forward. If a peer reviewer wishes to remain anonymous to the review authors, then they must indicate this on the feedback form. And we have now a suggested process for documenting when peer reviewers wish to remain anonymous. Hopefully, this isn't going to be a frequent event, and this is just a suggestion. So what we've suggested is that you can use the notes field in Archie. And to do this, you add a note to that peer reviewer's properties sheet in Archie. You have to assign the group role referee to the person, and you then create a new administrative note, and this is a suggested title, a title 2018 closed peer review submitted, but obviously you can use your own words or what suits your particular purpose. And you can also add the name of the protocol or the review to the note text, because that's useful for future reference. Review groups can then run the following advanced search that's been put together for all those peer reviewers who have submitted closed peer review, and this helps you identify them. I'm not going to go through the search in detail. It's quite a simple one by selecting the people option and following this process. I'm sure Bryony told you at the outset that copies of these slides will be made available to you all after the webinar. So things like the searches and some of the processes that we've suggested, you can use the slides as reference. And finally, I'd like to outline a couple of ways of adding peer reviewers to the group's website. We've got a couple of options. This is the first one, and this is identifying them by calendar year. So what we're suggesting you could do is to insert a new custom workflow task parallel to task D1, which is send comments to the contact editor, in your current active workflow. Or you can go through to your workflow template and add it to your template workflow for the future. The new task could be named add names of peer reviewers to CRG website or your group website. And as a descriptor for the text, you could use names of peer reviewers who agreed to be acknowledged to the CRG websites should be added here, or some similar explanation. This task, and the idea behind it, is to prompt you to add the names of the reviewers to your website. In some ways, it's entirely up to you. It's easier to do this as the year progresses, but it is possible to run an advanced search in Archie for a given calendar year and add those names retrospectively. And this search is shown here. Again, you'll be given a copy of this with the slides. The task option is selected at the top, and if you follow this through, and then you can choose your period that it covers. Obviously, we appreciate that groups already do this, and many will have their own system in place for doing this process. This was just one example that can be used, and we do have another option, which is to use the Notes tab, and that's to use it in a similar way to the way it was used to record a peer reviewer who wishes to remain anonymous. In this case, the Notes tab is used for each peer reviewer who agrees to peer review and to be acknowledged on the group's website. And the process for this is that, again, you assign the group role referee to the reviewer. You create a new admin note in their properties sheet, give it a title. This is a suggested text, 2018 peer-reviewed and agreed acknowledgement. Again, note the name of the draft they've reviewed in the note text. And then these reviewers also can be identified by searching Archie. Just go back one, Bryony, using the following search string at the bottom. And again, this is this slide will be made available to you, selecting the people option and running that search. You should be aware that you'll have to run a separate search for consumer referees, because this search, if you notice, only identifies peer reviewers, those with the role referee. So if you have consumer referees, you just substitute in this search the role consumer. And also worth remembering, if you want to identify your statistical referees and they have the group role statistician, then you can amend the search in the same way. And now that you've generated your list of peer reviewers and consumers who've agreed to be acknowledged on your website, the next slide shows some example text for acknowledging those peer reviewers. And as I've already said, this is just an example. Some groups list their peer reviewers by country, some list them alphabetically, some list by topic area. It's really up to you, but we've put together an example here of one way in which they can be acknowledged and can be visible on your website, and it's done by area, clinical and consumer reviewers. And finally, turning to Archie and workflows. So I wouldn't be doing my job without reminding you that Archie is a really valuable tool in helping you to manage this editorial process. Archie can be used to hold peer reviewer contact details, record further details on reviewers' interests in the notes section. You can use it to link to relevant interests on topic lists. You can use it to record past contributions the quality of the feedback, the timeliness of the response, and other associated issues. Workflows can be used to send the invitation to the peer reviewer to complete the process and all the actions that you go through after the peer reviewer has accepted your invitation, to then store the feedback that the peer reviewer has given, to store authors' responses to the feedback, to store editorial-based comments. Now, we do know that many of you are already using Archie and the workflows in this way, and we just encourage others who might only be using it partly, so part of the system, to develop their involvement further. I know exactly what it's like. You're using Archie in a way that's very comfortable to you, and we're all time challenged and think, I don't really have the time to work out how best to use it fully for the process, or I don't have the support to go through all those stages. ME Support is here to help you do this, and we've developed some training materials which we plan to record in the form of a webinar and make it available on the training website. And these materials cover all of the aspects listed on this slide, with screenshots, with narrative to guide you through the process. As always, we'll point you to the training server where you can try out and experiment with various aspects of Archie and workflows without compromising your real data. I just wanted to say briefly that we haven't recorded those webinars yet, but Liz and I have spent some time pulling them together and trying to work through a logical step-by-step process that we hope will help you make fully use of Archie. Again, many of you are probably doing this, I'm sure, now, but it's just an additional aid to encourage those who haven't fully bitten the bullet yet. And that's all from me. Thank you.